The quiet streets of Norman, Oklahoma, carried a tension that no one could see but everyone could feel. It had been 12 years since 14-year-old Valerie Hart went missing, leaving behind an empty room, a broken family, and a town haunted by unanswered questions. Her parents never stopped searching, never stopped hoping that some clue would resurface, that some forgotten piece of evidence would finally lead them back to their daughter. Valerie's disappearance had become part of the town's fabric, whispered about in grocery aisles, recounted during school reunions, and memorialized silently in bedrooms where posters of her smiling face still hung. The pain of not knowing had grown heavier with each passing year, settling into every corner of her family's lives and leaving an invisible scar across the community. The original investigation had been exhaustive for its time, but the case had grown cold as witnesses moved away, memories faded, and technology lagged behind the evolving methods of detection. Police files were filled with statements that offered little beyond speculation, and every lead seemed to dissolve into dead ends. Yet, despite the stagnation, Valerie's story refused to fade. Detectives assigned to the case over the years often spoke of her with a mix of admiration and guilt, aware that the tools at their disposal were insufficient to catch the person who had changed a life forever. Then, in the early months of 2014, a small but significant breakthrough arrived. Investigators were revisiting cold cases with a new approach, combining old evidence with modern forensic technology. A single strand of hair, carefully preserved in a forgotten evidence bag, became the focal point. Forensic analysts ran it through the latest DNA profiling systems, comparing it to databases that had grown exponentially since Valerie's disappearance. The results were startling. A match emerged, one that tied a local man, previously unsuspected, to the crime in a way that left detectives both stunned and vindicated. For years, he had blended into the community, his outward normalcy masking a darkness that only the careful science of DNA could finally expose. News of the development traveled slowly at first, as investigators meticulously re-verified every connection. Families of the missing, still living with the echoes of the past, were contacted and reassured that the breakthrough was legitimate. Valerie's parents, upon hearing the news, experienced a maelstrom of emotions: relief, disbelief, rage, and sorrow intertwined. The possibility that the person responsible for their daughter's suffering could finally be held accountable was a fragile but vital light in a decade-long darkness. For the first time in years, they allowed themselves to imagine a conclusion, to picture a courtroom where the truth would stand undeniable. The arrest itself was both dramatic and surreal. The suspect, a man named Douglas Kent, had long been a familiar figure in Norman, a neighbor to some, a coworker to others, and yet a complete stranger in the context of Valerie's disappearance. The shock of his connection to the case reverberated through the town, leaving residents questioning what they thought they knew about the people around them. For many, the revelation ignited fear, a sense of betrayal, but also a cautious hope that justice, though delayed, could now be realized. Kent was taken into custody without incident, his calm demeanor failing to conceal the gravity of the situation as authorities laid out the evidence connecting him to Valerie. Throughout the days that followed, investigators reconstructed the events of that fateful day in 2002. Interviews with neighbors, re-examinations of crime scene photographs, and careful scrutiny of Kent's movements painted a picture that was both chilling and methodical. The more the story unfolded, the more it revealed the intricate planning that had allowed him to evade detection for so long. Yet each revelation, while painful, also reinforced the certainty of the case. This was a man whose actions could no longer be hidden, whose deception had been pierced by the relentless march of forensic science. Valerie's family, while devastated by the memories that resurfaced, found an unexpected measure of solace in the clarity of the investigation. They were finally able to answer questions that had haunted them for over a decade: the what, the how, and the who that had eluded them for so long. The community, too, began to heal, gathering for vigils and memorials that honored Valerie's life rather than just mourning her loss. Each act of remembrance became an assertion that, even in the face of darkness, resilience and truth could prevail. This breakthrough also served as a reminder of the importance of never giving up on cold cases. Detectives across Oklahoma and beyond cited Valerie's case as proof that time alone does not erase justice. Advances in DNA technology, the tireless dedication of law enforcement, and the persistence of grieving families had converged to deliver long-awaited answers. The case became a benchmark, demonstrating how careful preservation of evidence and relentless investigation could intersect to finally illuminate decades-old mysteries. Valerie Hart's story, though rooted in tragedy, transformed into one of perseverance, the kind that resonated across the community. Her name, once spoken only in whispers of sorrow, was now invoked with a measure of strength and reverence. The arrest of Douglas Kent provided a tangible endpoint to a narrative that had remained unresolved for 12 years, affirming the belief that the passage of time does not diminish the possibility of justice. Her family, while forever marked by the pain of her loss, could at last begin to rebuild, their lives no longer suspended in the void of uncertainty. Norman itself felt the ripple of closure. The town, shaped by both grief and resilience, began to reclaim spaces that had been overshadowed by fear. Neighborhoods once wary opened up again. Schools remembered Valerie not just for the circumstances of her disappearance, but for her laughter, her kindness, and the potential that had been stolen too soon. The convergence of science, human determination, and relentless investigation had proven that truth, even after many years, could not be silenced. In the weeks following Douglas Kent's arrest, the atmosphere in Norman shifted from disbelief to cautious reflection. The town had spent over a decade grappling with the void Valerie's disappearance had left, and now that void was filled with a mixture of answers and unresolved pain. For Valerie's mother, Corinne Hart, the relief of knowing who had taken her daughter was tempered by the memories of her absence, birthdays missed, milestones never celebrated, and a life that had been cruelly interrupted. Every piece of evidence unveiled during the investigation reopened old wounds, but it also provided a narrative that had been missing for 12 years. It allowed her to place each unanswered question into context, to finally connect the dots that had haunted her for more than a decade. Douglas Kent's behavior during interrogations offered a chilling insight into the mind behind the crime. His initial calmness cracked under the weight of evidence, and the forensic proof, DNA from strands of hair and fibers meticulously preserved, left him no room to maneuver. Detectives reported that his demeanor shifted between defiance and denial, eventually leading to partial confessions that revealed shocking layers of planning. Every revelation seemed to both terrify and captivate the community, as details emerged about how he had exploited trust, observed routines, and carefully concealed his involvement. The sense of normalcy he had maintained in town, neighbors interacting with him daily without suspicion, became a stark reminder of how appearances can deceive. During court preparation, the investigators meticulously reconstructed Valerie's last known movements. School records, neighborhood interviews, and the rediscovered forensic evidence painted a vivid timeline of her final day. This painstaking attention to detail was critical not only for securing justice, but also for giving Valerie's family the concrete truth they had long sought. Each layer of the narrative brought new twists. Previously overlooked clues now made sense, alibis fell apart, and witness recollections aligned in ways that left no room for doubt. The painstaking work of connecting evidence to human memory underscored the complexity of cold cases, demonstrating how even small, forgotten details can unlock decades-old mysteries. The trial, when it finally commenced, drew attention far beyond Norman. Media coverage focused not only on the crime, but also on the extraordinary persistence of investigators and Valerie's family. Journalists highlighted the evolution of forensic science, contrasting the limitations of 2002 with the breakthroughs that had now made conviction possible. Public interest was intense, with the story resonating as a testament to the power of modern technology and unwavering determination. Across the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized, every testimony dissected, and yet the narrative remained coherent. Valerie's life had been taken, and the person responsible had finally been brought to account. Witnesses testified about Valerie's vibrant personality, her love for books, her laughter that could fill a room, and the small gestures that revealed her kindness. Their stories humanized her, moving the courtroom from a sterile recounting of events to a vivid portrayal of a life interrupted. Friends spoke of ordinary teenage moments, the first day of high school, shared secrets, summer adventures that now seemed bittersweet. The juxtaposition of these everyday recollections with the horrific reality of her disappearance added layers of emotional intensity, drawing attention to the profound impact of one person's loss on an entire community. Throughout the proceedings, Valerie Hart and her husband Thomas remained present, often quiet but visibly affected. The courtroom, heavy with the weight of anticipation, became a space where grief met justice. There were moments when their composure faltered, tears revealing both the pain of past years and the tentative relief that the nightmare was drawing to an end. Each revelation, while painful, reinforced the notion that the truth, no matter how delayed, was inexorable. It was a slow, emotional reckoning, bridging the gap between tragedy and accountability, between despair and hope. As the trial unfolded, additional details emerged about Kent's methods of concealment. Investigators discovered that he had taken extraordinary precautions to avoid detection, discarding potential evidence, manipulating alibis, and presenting a public persona designed to deflect suspicion. The sophistication of his deception added shock to the narrative, highlighting both the cunning involved and the remarkable efficacy of forensic science in ultimately exposing him. Community members, initially stunned, began to feel a growing sense of relief, knowing that their vigilance and the painstaking work of law enforcement had prevailed. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the forensic evidence, showing how DNA technology, once in its infancy in 2002, had advanced to a point where even minute traces could be matched definitively. Fiber analysis, hair comparison, and advanced laboratory techniques converged to paint an incontrovertible portrait of Kent's involvement. Expert testimony underscored the reliability of these methods, countering any defense claims of coincidence or contamination. The courtroom became a theater of scientific certainty, with each piece of evidence methodically dismantling the denials and obfuscations that had allowed him to remain free for so long. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the trial was emotionally charged, with dramatic twists in testimony and unexpected revelations. Former acquaintances of Kent came forward, recalling odd behaviors that had previously been dismissed, now understood as subtle signs of guilt. These insights, when combined with the DNA evidence, created a layered and compelling narrative, revealing a level of premeditation and deceit that stunned even seasoned investigators. The story was not only about Valerie and her tragic fate, but also about the lengths humans will go to hide their crimes, and the persistence required to unmask them. As the trial progressed toward its conclusion, Valerie's family experienced a complex blend of closure and mourning. The sense of justice being served was tempered by the realization that no verdict could restore the lost years, the unfulfilled dreams, or the ordinary joys stolen by violence. Yet, each day brought a step closer to resolution, a final accounting for a crime that had long lingered in the shadows. The courtroom became a place where time, science, and human tenacity converged, proving that even after more than a decade, the search for truth could yield answers. The community, while still grappling with the emotional weight of the case, began to reclaim a sense of normalcy. School programs, local organizations, and neighborhood initiatives honored Valerie's memory while reinforcing the message that persistence and vigilance can overcome even the darkest secrets. The arrest of Douglas Kent did more than solve a crime. It reminded everyone in Norman that justice, though delayed, is not denied. Valerie's story became a testament to resilience, both for her family and for the town that had carried her absence for 12 long years. The day the verdict was read in Norman, the courtroom was tense, every seat filled, the air thick with anticipation. Valerie's mother, Corinne Hart, clutched her husband's hand, her knuckles white as the judge's voice carried across the room. When the words "guilty on all counts" finally echoed, a wave of relief, grief, and disbelief swept through the family. After 12 years of uncertainty, the nightmare was finally over. For the community, the long shadow that had hung over their small town was lifted, replaced by a cautious sense of closure. Neighbors who had followed the case since Valerie's disappearance felt a collective exhale, a recognition that justice had, at last, prevailed. Even with the guilty verdict, emotions remained raw. Corinne and Thomas Hart wept quietly, knowing that justice could not restore their daughter's life, but feeling a profound sense of vindication. Valerie's absence had left an irreplaceable void, and now that void was framed by truth rather than unanswered questions. Friends and extended family shared stories of Valerie's warmth, intelligence, and humor, honoring her memory with laughter and tears intertwined. The juxtaposition of grief and relief created a complex emotional tapestry, one that encapsulated the reality of delayed justice, a mixture of sorrow for what was lost and hope that truth, eventually, always emerges. Douglas Kent's sentencing brought further shock. The judge, while adhering to the law, emphasized the callousness of the crime and the extraordinary deceit Kent had employed to evade capture for more than a decade. Each detail of his planning, concealment, and manipulation was laid bare, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that the punishment was deserved. While the legal system provided retribution, it also illuminated the resilience of the investigative team, whose dedication had transformed cold evidence into irrefutable proof. The courtroom buzzed with the stark realization that patience, meticulous work, and advances in forensic science could, even after years, crack the most stubborn of cases. For the investigators, the case's resolution was both professional triumph and emotional closure. Detectives who had started on the case in 2002 were now able to see the full arc, from the first frantic reports of Valerie's disappearance to the final courtroom scene. For many, the satisfaction was tempered by memories of false leads, dead ends, and the haunting frustration of years spent searching for answers. Yet the DNA breakthroughs and careful reconstruction of evidence demonstrated that persistence, combined with modern technology, could overcome the limits of the past. It was a reminder that cold cases are never truly frozen. Time may delay justice, but it cannot prevent it. The community of Norman, once shrouded in fear and suspicion, began to heal. Schools organized discussions about safety and awareness, while local groups commemorated Valerie's life, highlighting her compassion and vibrancy. Small acts of remembrance, a scholarship fund in her name, memorial events, and public storytelling helped transform the narrative from one of fear to one of remembrance and resilience. Townspeople spoke openly about the lessons learned, the importance of vigilance, the power of science, and the courage required to confront uncomfortable truths. Valerie's story, while tragic, became a beacon of hope, showing that even the darkest chapters could ultimately lead to light. Corinne Hart, in particular, emerged as a quietly powerful figure. Her willingness to speak publicly, to share Valerie's story, and to engage with investigators provided both comfort to others and clarity to the investigation. She became an advocate for families of missing persons, her voice carrying the weight of lived experience, grief, and perseverance. Her public statements emphasized that while no verdict could return a lost life, bringing the perpetrator to justice could help prevent future tragedies. She spoke of resilience, urging communities to support one another, to trust in the processes of law enforcement, and to never give up hope. Douglas Kent's attempts to maintain composure in the courtroom ultimately failed. His facade of control crumbled as the full weight of the sentence and the detailed recounting of his actions were presented. Observers noted the cold precision of his prior actions contrasted with the human emotions surrounding him: grief, anger, and sorrow from those impacted by his crime. It was a vivid reminder that crime leaves not only immediate victims, but ripples that extend through families, friends, and entire communities. The long-delayed arrest and conviction served as a powerful narrative. Deceit may succeed temporarily, but truth has a persistent, often unstoppable momentum. In the months following the trial, Norman experienced a subtle transformation. Fear that had lingered in the corners of the town since 2002 gradually eased. Neighbors felt safer, conversations shifted from suspicion to reflection, and the collective memory of Valerie's life became a source of community bonding rather than just sorrow. The Harts, while still mourning, took solace in the knowledge that Douglas Kent would never harm another person. The resolution of the case, while delayed, provided a framework for healing, a rare and precious gift in the aftermath of tragedy. Valerie's story, preserved in media accounts, memorials, and the hearts of those who loved her, became a testament to both loss and the resilience of those left behind. Her life, though tragically cut short, inspired change, dialogue, and vigilance. The meticulous work of law enforcement, combined with the advances in forensic technology that finally revealed the truth, offered hope to other families trapped in uncertainty. It proved that no matter how much time passes, dedication and innovation can bring clarity, closure, and justice. As the final chapter closed on Valerie Hart's case, the emotional resonance of the story remained vivid. For her family, justice was achieved, but their grief would remain a lifelong companion. For the town of Norman, the case reinforced the value of community, vigilance, and the importance of never ignoring the small, overlooked details that can ultimately break open the truth. The arrest of Douglas Kent did more than resolve a crime. It reminded everyone that persistence, compassion, and science together could illuminate even the darkest corners of human deception. Valerie's name, her life, and the truth behind her disappearance became a symbol of hope, justice, and the enduring power of truth.